The scorching Texas sun beat down on rancher Will Harper as he searched for his missing cattle near Devil's Canyon. At 35, Will had learned to expect trouble in this lawless territory, but nothing had prepared him for what he found beside the dried creek bed. A young woman sat chained to an abandoned wagon wheel, her dark hair matted with dust and her lips cracked from thirst. A crude wooden sign nailed to the wagon read, "Too dangerous to keep, beware the girl." "Please," she whispered as Will approached cautiously. "Water." Will studied her carefully. Despite her condition, she was clearly educated and well-bred. Her torn dress had once been expensive, and her hands showed no signs of hard labor. "Who are you?" Will asked, offering his canteen. "Maria Santos," she replied, drinking gratefully. "I was with the Brennan wagon train. They blamed me for the deaths." "What deaths?" "7 people died of fever. I tried to help them with herbal remedies my grandmother taught me, but when some died anyway, they said I was a witch." Maria's voice was bitter. "They chained me here to die rather than hang me outright." Will examined the heavy chains binding her wrists. The metal was rusted, but still strong. "How long have you been here?" 3 days, maybe 4. I've lost count." Looking at her desperate condition, Will made his decision. He pulled a crowbar from his saddlebags and began working on the chains. "I'm taking you to my ranch. You can rest, clean up, and decide what you want to do next." As the chains finally broke free, Maria rubbed her raw wrists and looked at Will with tears of gratitude. "Why would you help me? The sign warns that I'm dangerous." Will helped her to her feet. "Because leaving someone to die in the desert isn't justice, it's murder. And because I've seen enough fear and superstition to know the difference between a witch and a scapegoat." As they rode toward his ranch, Will couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. He had come looking for cattle and found a woman who claimed to be the victim of mob justice. Whether that was true or not remained to be seen. At the Lone Star Ranch, Maria proved to be a capable helper despite her ordeal. She cooked, cleaned, and even helped tend Will's horses, with a skill that surprised him. The animals seemed unusually calm around her, responding to her touch in ways Will had never seen. "You have a way with them," Will observed as Maria soothed a nervous stallion. "Animals don't lie about their feelings," Maria replied. "They know when someone means them harm." On the second day, their peace was shattered by the arrival of 5 armed men, led by a grim-faced wagon master named Tom Brennan. "Harper," Brennan called from the yard, "we know you've got the witch. Hand her over, and there won't be trouble." Will stepped onto his porch, rifle in hand. "The lady is under my protection. State your business or ride on." "That woman murdered 7 members of my train," Brennan snarled, "including children. She's got to pay for what she done." "What proof do you have?" Will demanded. "She poisoned them with her devil's brew. Made them sicker instead of better." Maria appeared in the doorway behind Will. "I gave them willow bark tea and cool compresses. The same treatment I gave to others who recovered. I'm not responsible for those who were too sick to save." "Liar," one of the men shouted. "You cursed our train from the moment you joined it." "I'm a healer, not a murderer," Maria said firmly. "My grandmother taught me to use plants to help people, not harm them." Will studied the faces of the accusers, seeing fear and anger, but no real evidence. "Unless you've got proof of wrongdoing, you're not taking anyone from my ranch." "You're making a mistake, Harper," Brennan warned. "That woman will bring you nothing but trouble." "That's my choice to make," Will replied. As the men rode away, promising to return with the law, Maria touched Will's arm gratefully. "Thank you for standing up for me. But they're right about one thing. I will bring you trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Maria hesitated, then decided on honesty. "There's something I haven't told you. I can sometimes sense things about people, their pain, their fears, their illnesses. It makes me a better healer, but it also makes people suspicious." Will looked at her carefully. "What do you sense about me?" Loneliness, Maria said softly. You've been alone for a long time, and you're tired of it. But you're also afraid to trust someone again. The accuracy of her observation shook Will. How could you know that? Because I can feel it. Just like I can feel your kindness, despite the walls you've built around yourself. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Will found himself telling Maria about his past, how his wife had died in childbirth 3 years ago, how he had withdrawn from society to avoid the pain of loss. I understand loneliness, Maria said. I've been alone since my grandmother died. The wagon train was supposed to be my chance at a new life in California. What will you do now? I don't know. I can't go back to the train, and I can't stay here forever. Why not? Will asked. I could use the help, and you seem to like the work. Maria looked at him with surprise. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a home, Will said quietly, if you want it. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A well-dressed man in an expensive suit rode up with 2 armed companions, introducing himself as Dr. Edmund Blackwood from the Territorial Medical Board. Mr. Harper, Blackwood said smoothly, I understand you're harboring a woman who has been practicing medicine without proper training or authority. Maria Santos is a guest in my home, Will replied carefully. What's your interest in her? The woman has been passing herself off as a healer, treating people with dangerous folk remedies. Several people have died as a result of her interference. Maria emerged from the house, her face pale but determined. Dr. Blackwood, I should have known you'd be behind this. You know this man? Will asked. He owns the patent medicine company that supplies the frontier settlements, Maria explained. My grandmother's remedies were cutting into his profits in New Mexico. Blackwood's polished facade slipped slightly. Your grandmother was an unlicensed practitioner who interfered with proper medical treatment. My grandmother saved more lives than you ever will with your colored water and laudanum, Maria shot back. And you know it. Will began to understand. This isn't about justice or public safety. This is about money. Don't be naive, Harper, Blackwood said. This woman is dangerous. She convinced people to reject proper medicine in favor of primitive herb treatments. Proper medicine? Maria laughed bitterly. You mean the mercury pills that poisoned half the children in Las Cruces? Or the opium syrup that turned mothers into addicts? That's enough, Blackwood snapped, his composure finally cracking. You've caused me enough trouble, Witch. It ends here. His hand moved toward his gun, but Will was faster. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Doctor. You're interfering with official business, Blackwood warned. What I'm doing is protecting an innocent woman from a corrupt businessman, Will replied. Now get off my land. This isn't over, Blackwood threatened as he and his men mounted their horses. I have connections in the territorial government. I'll see that woman hanged for murder. After they left, Maria sat heavily on the porch steps. He'll make good on his threat. Blackwood has enough money to buy judges and marshals. Then we'll have to make sure the truth comes out first, Will said. That night, Maria told Will the full story. Blackwood's patent medicine company had been selling dangerous and ineffective treatments throughout the Southwest. When Maria's grandmother began treating people successfully with traditional remedies, it hurt Blackwood's profits. He had used his influence to have her grandmother arrested on charges of witchcraft, and she had died in jail before the case came to trial. I continued her work in secret, Maria explained. But when I joined the wagon train, Blackwood's men were waiting. They contaminated the water supply to cause the fever outbreak, then made sure I was blamed for the deaths. So the whole thing was a setup, Will realized. Blackwood wanted me discredited and dead. The wagon train incident was supposed to accomplish both. Will felt rage building inside him. Innocent people had died just to frame Maria for murder. We're going to stop him. How? He has money, influence, and hired guns. He also has enemies, Will pointed out. Other healers he's driven out of business. families whose loved ones died from mistreatments, honest lawmen who are tired of corruption. You think we can build a case against him? I think we can try. And I think there are more people willing to help than you realize. Will's instincts proved correct. Over the next week, a surprising number of people came forward with stories about Dr. Blackwood's corrupt practices. Families who had lost loved ones to his dangerous treatments, legitimate doctors who had been driven out of business by his political connections, and even former employees who were willing to testify about the contaminated medicines. The breakthrough came when Tom Brennan arrived at the ranch, hat in hand and shame written across his weathered face. "Miss Santos," he said awkwardly, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong about what happened to my people." "What changed your mind?" Maria asked. "My youngest boy got sick after we left you behind. Real sick. I was about to give him some of Dr. Blackwood's fever medicine when I remembered what you said about willow bark tea." Brennan's voice broke slightly. "I made the tea instead of using the patent medicine. My boy recovered, but 2 other children who got Blackwood's treatment died." "I'm sorry for your loss," Maria said gently. "I realized then that you weren't the one poisoning people. You were trying to save them from being poisoned." Brennan's testimony was the final piece of evidence they needed. When Deputy Marshal Coleman arrived from Austin to investigate the charges against Maria, he found a stack of sworn statements and physical evidence that painted a very different picture than Blackwood's accusations. Dr. Blackwood has been selling medicine laced with mercury and strychnine, Marshal Coleman reported after examining the evidence. And there's proof that his men deliberately contaminated the wagon train's water supply. The confrontation came when Blackwood arrived with a forged arrest warrant, expecting to find Maria alone and defenseless. Instead, he found a ranch surrounded by Deputy Marshal Coleman and 6 federal agents. "Dr. Edmund Blackwood," Coleman announced, "you're under arrest for murder, fraud, and conspiracy." "This is ridiculous," Blackwood protested. "I'm a respected businessman." "You're a murderer who's been selling poison to innocent families," Coleman replied. "And thanks to the testimony of brave people like Miss Santos here, we can finally prove it." As Blackwood and his associates were led away in chains, Maria felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had been carrying since her grandmother's death. "It's really over?" she asked Will. "It's over," Will confirmed, putting his arm around her. "Blackwood will spend the rest of his life in prison, and you're free to live your life without looking over your shoulder." "What kind of life do you think that should be?" Maria asked with a smile. Will's answer was to pull her close and kiss her gently. "The kind of life we build together, if you're willing." Maria looked around at the ranch that had become her sanctuary, then back at the man who had risked everything to protect her. "I can't think of anything I'd want more." 6 months later, Will and Maria Harper were married in a ceremony attended by many of the people whose lives Maria had saved with her healing knowledge. Dr. Blackwood's corrupt empire had collapsed, and honest healers were once again free to practice their trade without fear. The sign that had once worn "too dangerous to keep" had been wrong in every way that mattered. Maria Santos had indeed been dangerous to corrupt men who profited from others' suffering, dangerous to those who preferred comfortable lies to difficult truths. But for Will Harper, a man who valued courage and compassion above safety and conformity, she had been exactly the kind of danger his life needed. And as they worked together to build their ranch and help their community, both Will and Maria knew that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was trust your heart, and sometimes that was also the most important thing of all. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Lone Star Ranch as Maria Harper stood on the porch, watching her husband Will teach their 4-year-old son, Miguel, how to rope a fence post. The boy's laughter echoed across the yard as his small lasso fell short of its target for the 10th time. "Patience, mijo," Maria called out in Spanish, using the endearment her grandmother had once used with her. "Your papa didn't learn to rope in a day either." Will grinned and walked over to give Miguel another demonstration. At 40, Will had found a contentment he never thought possible after losing his first wife. The ranch had prospered under their joint care, and their home had become a beacon of hope for others in need. Maria's healing practice had grown as well, but now it operated openly and legally. After Dr. Blackwood's conviction, the territorial government had established new regulations that recognized traditional healing methods alongside conventional medicine. Maria had been among the first to receive official certification, and her reputation for successful treatments had spread throughout Texas. "Mama, look," Miguel called out, finally managing to loop his tiny rope around the fence post. "I did it. Muy bien." Maria applauded, her hand resting on her rounded belly. In 3 months, Miguel would have a little sister, and Maria could already sense the strong, spirited nature of the child growing within her. Tom Brennan rode up the path, dismounting with the careful movements of a man whose arthritis was acting up. The former wagon master had become one of their closest friends after publicly apologizing for his role in Maria's persecution. "Morning, Tom," Will called out. "How's the back today?" "Better since Maria gave me that new tea blend," Brennan replied gratefully. "That willow bark and ginger combination works better than anything the doctors in town can provide." Maria smiled. "My grandmother always said the earth provides everything we need to heal ourselves. We just have to listen." "Speaking of listening," Brennan said, "I heard some interesting news in town yesterday. Dr. Blackwood died in prison last week. Consumption, they said." Will and Maria exchanged glances. Neither felt joy at the news, but there was a sense of justice finally being complete. "May God forgive him," Maria said quietly. "He caused so much pain, but hatred won't heal the world." "That's why folks respect you so much," Brennan observed. "You could have been bitter after what happened, but instead you chose to help people." As Brennan rode away after accepting Maria's invitation to Sunday dinner, Will joined his wife on the porch. He put his arm around her, and they watched Miguel practice his roping with the determined concentration only a 4-year-old could muster. "Do you ever regret it?" Will asked. "Giving up your plans for California?" Maria leaned into his embrace, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. California was just a place to run to. This is home. Even after everything that happened, the accusations, the danger, the fear. "Especially because of all that," Maria replied. "It brought us together, and it taught me that sometimes what seems like the worst thing that could happen turns out to be the best thing that ever happened." A rider appeared on the horizon, approaching slowly. Will tensed slightly, old habits from their dangerous early days together, but Maria placed a calming hand on his arm. "It's all right," she said. "I can sense it's someone in need, not someone bringing trouble." The rider turned out to be a young woman, probably no more than 18, leading a horse with an injured man slumped in the saddle. Both were dusty and exhausted from hard travel. "Please," the young woman called out as she reached the yard. "My husband is hurt. We heard there was a healer here who might help us." Maria was already moving toward them, her healer's instincts taking over. "Bring him inside. Will, help me get him to the examination room." As they carried the injured man into the house, Maria felt the familiar surge of purpose that came with helping those in need. This was her calling, her gift, and her joy, to heal, to help, to offer hope to those who had lost it. Later that evening, after the injured man had been treated and was resting comfortably with his grateful wife beside him, Will found Maria sitting in their bedroom, brushing her long dark hair by lamplight. "Another life saved," he said, settling beside her on the bed. "Another family kept together," Maria corrected. "That's what matters most." Will took the brush from her hands and began gently working it through her hair, a nightly ritual they both cherished. "Miguel asked me today if the bad man might come back someday." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that there will always be bad men in the world, but there will also always be good people willing to stand up to them, and that as long as we stick together and help each other, the good people will win." Maria turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting the lamplight. "Do you believe that?" "I have to," Will said, "because the alternative is too dark to consider, and because you've shown me that it's true. You turned something terrible into something beautiful. You turned fear into love, hatred into healing. We did that together," Maria reminded him. "I couldn't have done any of it without you." Will kissed her forehead gently. "Do you think our children will understand someday about what we went through to find each other?" "I think they'll understand that love is worth fighting for," Maria said, "and that sometimes the people who seem most dangerous to the world are actually the ones the world needs most." As they settled into bed, Will's arm around his wife and their unborn child, Maria thought about the chain that had once bound her to that abandoned wagon. At the time, it had seemed like the end of everything, her freedom, her hope, her life itself. But now she understood that those chains had actually been the beginning of her real life. They had led her to Will, to their family, to the healing practice that fulfilled her grandmother's legacy, and to the understanding that sometimes what breaks us also remakes us into something stronger. Outside their window, the Texas wind whispered across the prairie, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows to come. And in the Lone Star Ranch house, the Harper family slept peacefully, surrounded by the love they had fought so hard to build and the community they had helped to heal. The sign that had once warned the world to beware of Maria Santos was long gone, burned in the fire the night she and Will were married. In its place, a simple wooden sign now hung by their front gate. Harper Ranch, all welcome. And in smaller letters below, added by Maria herself, where healing begins with hope,